Hiya.
Hi everyone, I'm Nozzy and I'm here with a special guest. Do you think you're special?
I can be.
I feel like it's been difficult to get you here. We've been working at it.
Long time coming.
Long time coming. I'm excited to see what you share with us. So, who are you?
Yeah,
Tell
so thanks for having me. My name is Eddie. I work for Scripture Union in 2 different roles, so I'll try and summarise them quickly. But the first one is as part of the national team, and basically I help build community with our partners. So it's a sort of a volunteer community coordinator role. And as part of that, we do community online and in person. At the moment, we're just doing our regional gathering, so we're getting to meet all of our partner churches around the country, and just build community with them, which is really exciting. So that's sort of my main role. That's 3 days a week, and then 2 days a week I am a regional worker. So I go around my region and just link in with those guys that we're supporting from the different churches, and get to chat with them, get to learn from them, hopefully impart some of the sort of the SU
Some
research
wisdom.
and resources as well, which is great. And at the moment I'm based in Cornwall, so that's where I'm doing that.
That is a very exciting region. How are you finding Cornwall?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, the first thing people ask me is, have I been surfing? I haven't yet.
Oh,
So I've been there 6 months and I'm yet to surf, but it's coming this summer. The weather's getting nice now, so I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna give it a go.
We'll actually look for you, and that's for an update one day soon. Okay. So, what is your story? How did you become a Christian? How did you come to faith?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I'd probably start when I was 16. My first 16 years of life, I was really trying to, I guess, answer that question. My parents had split, as I think most households had sort of found themselves in. And my mum was a Christian, so sometimes I was a Christian when I was sort of following her. My dad wasn't, so then I kind of wasn't a Christian. And I had these sort of 16 years where I really couldn't make up my own mind, and I would always just believe what my parents would believe in. So I was sort of a part-time Christian, part-time atheist, depending on who I was with, which is quite hard to sort of hold those two things together. And I think when I hit 16, I sort of decided what I wanted to do with my life a little bit, knew what I wanted to do at A-levels and all these things, and making these big decisions, but I still hadn't decided what I believed in. And I had this great youth worker that was when I was going to church with my mum, there was a youth worker there called Stacey, so shout out to Stacey, but in Warrington, and I think she just sat me down and said, you know what, it'd be great to know what you believe. Like she kind of had figured out that what my parents believed and stuff, and she kind of asked me a question of like, you know what do you believe? And I think it was through those conversations with her, and I sort of, she was my youth worker for I'd say 3 years up until 16, and that journey with her where she really encouraged me to find out what I believe myself. And to be honest, initially I went down to, okay, I'm going to be an atheist, I'm going to do that, and I think that still led me to a lot of questions. And then eventually I went, well, I've tried that for a bit of my own decision. Now let's see, actually, God, you know what? If you're there, let's give that a go. And it's sort of with my own belief. It's not just understanding what my parents believe. So I kind of, I guess, put that hat on for a bit, prayed, and just went, you know what, God, if you're there, I'm going to make my own decision now, and I want to see what this is like. I've heard a lot. I want to see what it's about for myself. And I'd say at that point, I kind of decided with my head that I was a Christian. But my story kind of didn't stop there. I reckon the next kind of 4 or 5 years up until I was about 21, I had this head belief. I kind of understood. I was like, if anyone asked me, I'd say I was a Christian. Yeah, I believed in God, but it really hadn't changed how I was living. And I think that was a real challenge for me, of not just a head belief, but actually is it heart and hands. And I think during that journey, I had some great people that I was journeying with, and just really encouraged to pray more. And it's then that I kind of fell in love with that decision and realized kind of actually the love that Jesus brings. And through that said, you know what, I need to be changing how I live. So I went from kind of drinking with my friends, partying with my friends, all of this sort of stuff, to actually changing it around. And I mean, that was quite a long journey. I didn't sort of stop straight away, but I think coming through that when I was 21, so I'd got 5 years after I'd made a decision, I'd say that I really started to live out my faith.
Yeah. What would you say to anyone that is a young person that's kind of stuck in that middle ground of being like, I believe in God, but I don't know how to like live it out? What would you say to someone?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and kind of sums up that journey that I was on for those 5 years. There's that verse in Matthew 5 where it talks about kind of don't let your light be hidden. A lamp shouldn't be hidden. It should be there to shine to others. And I think when it's just a head knowledge, it doesn't really do that. You do kind of keep it to yourself. You don't let it shine. And I think that really challenged me of, do you know what? If I do believe that Jesus made that sacrifice and actually it was the best decision of my life, why am I not telling others? I mean, I'm a massive football fan and I'll tell everyone about Watford. I mean, Watford, let's be honest, there's nothing too exciting there, but it's exciting for me. But for some reason, I'd sooner tell people about Watford, which is probably the worst decision to follow them of my life, although I'm sticking with it. Whereas Jesus, the best decision, I just wasn't really sharing it with people. And I guess that's what I'd encourage others to do, of actually, what does following Jesus mean to you? And do you want to keep that to yourself, or do you want to see those people around you to also encounter that?
Yeah, I can't wait to see all the Watford fans in the comments. It's going to be...
It'll always be the Luton
you can
fans.
field them.
It'll be the Luton fans that will pipe up, I'm sure. And obviously Luton fans suck, so...
Oh, I live way too close to Luton for that to happen. Okay, so how do you bring your life experiences into your ministry?
Yeah, I guess God really used some of those questions that I discussed about kind of actually not just having a head knowledge, but how does it change the way we live? And I think they're similar questions that a lot of children and young people, both kind of outside of church or perhaps those that are more connected and exploring their faith already, I think they have very similar questions. So I think I've been in a really fortunate position to kind of wrestle with those questions myself. It's then very useful when I'm having those conversations when they start asking the same questions, and I can share a little bit, I guess, of my testimony in that situation as well. I'd say on top of that, I trained as a football coach. I wasn't any good as playing, like I said, so I started coaching and really enjoyed that. And I think actually those environments of sport, not just football, but any sort of sport or physical activity, is such a great space for just kids to be, to connect. And during that, you can start to unpick some of these questions as well. I think sports is a great way of picking. For example, I'd often ask, we'll play a team game and I'll ask them, do you know what's a teammate for you? What's a good teammate? And they'll say things like, oh, well, I can see it as my friends. It's perhaps my family if their brothers or sisters are in the team. And they'll talk about it, someone you've got to communicate with, or maybe at professional level do life with. And I go, well, do you know what? That's what Jesus is like for me. It's kind of someone who actually I'll do life with, I'll communicate. Perhaps when I feel a bit surrounded, it's someone who I can talk to, relieve pressure, and they're there to support, just like, I guess, a teammate. And I mean, it's not a perfect analogy, but I think with different sports and physical games, you can really bring out some of these questions, which I guess is how I bring my experience to the table when I try and share my faith.
And through your life, what key influences have you had?
Yeah, I'd say growing up, I had probably in that stage of sort of between 16 and on, I had this great group of friends that, I mean, we were kind of all wrestling with faith at the same time. And probably I wasn't a great influence on them, but fortunately, sort of God's used that. We've grown up together, and now we're all, I guess, doing little bits of ministry here and there, sort of around the country, which is brilliant. But I think that group, there's about sort of 4 of us and a few others as well. But I think that group of 4 there was just so key for me in being able to really live out my faith and try it all together. It wasn't just me making mistakes. We were making mistakes together, but also there to encourage each other when we did make those mistakes. When someone did do something silly on a night out, actually the other 3 were there to go, you know, I probably shouldn't be doing that. And I think that was such a key influence for me growing up. At the moment, I'd say probably my fiance, definitely. I think she's also in ministry. We bring very different giftings, and I think she's always there to remind me of sort of really taking that time to listen to God, which I think actually before my time listening to God would be through worship and through reading the Bible, where she's really encouraging kind of for prayer and to listen in that way. And I think that's been a massive influence in the last few years as we've been together. That youth leader that I mentioned earlier that really sat me down and said, do you know what is it that you believe? And I think just learning those sorts of questions that she was asking me, not just to leave with me, but then she'd sort of sit there as a sounding board and help me sort of unpack that a little bit more. I'd say that was a massive, I guess, key for me in my journey, probably looking at that kind of explore to respond, like that head knowledge. I understood it, but I hadn't really applied it to myself and worked out what that means for myself. So so I'd say she was probably the first kind of faith guide in my life. And I'd say more recently, I'm massively blessed that God called me to Bible college. I'm studying at Regent's, and the lecturers just there, I'm really enjoying kind of picking their brains. I found that I was within sport as a coach, kind of doing a little bit of leadership here. And I really went there to sort of unpick, actually, what does it mean to be a Christian leader? What does it mean to lead like Jesus? Even if it's just sort of a group of kids you're leading and playing football, what could that be like? And I think the lecturers there at the moment are really when it comes to grow, they're really encouraging me there to press in and see what that looks like in my life and in my ministry.
That's great. And how has SU become part of your story?
Yeah, I've been with SU nearly 3 years now, so they've played a massive part in my story. I think before I joined, I was a youth leader at my church. I was unpicking during COVID, kind of what does it look like to do outreach and mission there, and it came up where there was this role to go and create community with other youth workers and just really to start unpicking these questions together and being a support unit together across England and Wales. And it's just something that really God stirred my heart of actually not only would I love to be a part of something like that, and I think as youth leaders and as children's and families workers, that's so important to be part of that community, but to be sort of in that position to sort of help create it. So that's kind of how I started with SU. Is I joined, and we've got this great community for faith guys that I sort of mentioned earlier, where we really come together, there's support, there's some training opportunities and all of this stuff, which is how I started. And I think I really enjoyed that. That was part-time, and then this job came up to actually start applying the coaching that I'd learned to do. I'd gone and studied coaching in a sports context, and to see what that looks like, to actually what is it like to coach churches in how we do mission. And I think that the framework and the way that the research that SU have done puts that out makes it such an easy way of viewing youth work and children's work in terms of pitching where it's at and also knowing what to do next. I think it's so encouraging to be able to do that. I think sometimes, particularly the position I found myself during COVID, it's like, wow, I'm just trying to get through the year. I don't know what's next. And how do I guess, start to get them to ask the questions that perhaps were key as my story, actually, not just I believe it, but how should this impact my life? How's it relevant to me? And I think that's what the framework does. It really helps youth workers to ask the children, young people they're working with, this isn't just what Christians believe, but this is what it means for you guys. So that was my second role. That's when I went full time, learning how to coach churches in that. And I think, that's my journey with SU so far, and I'm really enjoying it.
And our Revealing Jesus framework is targeted to help youth workers and church workers kind of reach out to the 95% of children, young people in England and Wales that don't go to church. But why do you think that is so important to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you kind of answered your own question there. Like 95% is massive. I mean, I think I heard somewhere that could be like sort of 12 million children and young people. That's a huge number. And I mean, that kind of answers the question. Like, that's such a big group of people that we've got to reach. I mean, there's that verse in Mark where it says, bring the little children to me, for I've got that the kingdom is for such as these. It is for them. And I just wonder if they've got these similar questions that perhaps we've all answered ourselves as Christians. We've had these questions ourselves, and these kids are there searching for answers. Like they learn about it at school, they kind of work out actually what Christians are, but they never really ask the question, well, what does that mean to you? Does that affect does it mean you should change how you live? Yeah. And I think that's kind of why it's so key to start reaching the 95, just to give them that option. How many of them have really been asked the question? It's like, actually, do you believe in Jesus? Or if Jesus was real or is real, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's so important. And how are SU doing that right now?
Yeah, I'd say partnership seems to be the key at the moment. We're really looking at what it is to be one movement with all of the volunteers that are partnering with us and all of the organisations. And I mean, we sort of partner with the whole church, whether it's just those sort of sat around that have a passion for reaching children, young people, perhaps those that are paid youth workers or volunteer youth workers or church leaders, right away through to sort of these local organisations that are doing schools work. And we're really partnering with them all, because this is a massive mission field. Like the workers are few, as that verse, isn't it? Yeah. And I think that's the key thing, is trying to actually really work together. We've all got the same mission, so how can we work together? And it's not about putting sort of SU and resources in the hands of youth workers. It's about actually equipping them to reveal Jesus. And I'd say that's the real key thing. And I think the other key with partnership, the other benefit of partnership, I'd say, with this community that we've got, we're just there to encourage each other. Like there's this verse in Thessalonians, isn't there, where it talks about being grateful, not just for what we've got, but being grateful actually for the work that other people are doing. And I think if you don't partner with other organisations, you're never going to hear about that stuff. And there's some great stuff going on out there that isn't SU doing it, but we're just managing there to sort of prayerfully support it. So I'd say that's really like where we're at with the partnership at the moment, and that's how we're trying to reach the 95%.
Yeah, and we've got so many amazing like national and local partners. But how is that looking for you now in Cornwall?
Yeah, so do you know what? It's been a bit different. So before I was in Milton Keynes, so it's technically a city. Doesn't really not feel much like a city
It's a
now,
city,
but it's a
okay.
city. So I guess we're both from Milton Keynes, aren't we?
Yeah,
So we can confirm it's a
yeah,
city.
yeah.
And yeah, this sort of city context where it's quite busy. People sort of traveling to London. It's a commuter, and actually there, I think there's a lot of kids that already connecting. There's a lot of groups that already have a lot of kids there.
Yeah.
Whereas now moving to Cornwall, it's quite a rural area. Like
Yeah,
I live in a town called Launceston, and it's probably as big as one of the estates that you find within Milton
Yeah.
Keynes. So this sort of rural way, I'd say again, partnership's still key. It's a way of actually linking different towns, and I think it's been so great to be in an area where actually there weren't many partners for SU because we didn't have anyone that local.
Yeah.
So since being there, it's been so encouraging to hear all the things that are happening in Cornwall, different sort of youth projects, different groups and clusters of churches that are already working together. And actually, again, like I said earlier, the first thing that happened in Cornwall was we were just able to partner with some brilliant churches, some brilliant organisations, and some brilliant, just passionate individuals. And I think we're been there for 6 months already, and we're starting to see some of that come up, and there's people that are really using the Revealing Jesus framework to kind of, I guess, reshape the work that they're doing in outreach. It's really exciting.
And what stories do you have about journeying young people and children in their walk?
Oh wow! I'd say there's probably so many stories I can think of. Just to name a few, one of the ways I guess we partner is with some of the national youth festivals, and it was just last year we were able to create a group where some children and young people that aren't necessarily in youth groups were able to come with us, with their faith guide and just be a part of that festival environment. And it was so encouraging to see one of the young girls there who came, and she was sharing about how her mental health has been affecting her time at school, and just her really unpicking during that festival, you know, what does it mean to be a follower of Jesus, and wrestling with his mental health, and actually this idea of anxiety and how Jesus just brings peace. And although I think she left and it wasn't a case of necessarily healing, but just the words, the way she spoke about it, I guess, the way she's referred to her own sort of mental well-being at the start of the festival to the end of the festival was just so encouraging. Hearing this actually, although sometimes I wake up and I'm not looking forward to school, it's okay because God gives me strength.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So yeah, I'd say that's one encouragement. If I've got time for one more.
No, keep going.
Okay, one more.
Bring all the stories.
Yeah, one more is we run this group called Amplify, where there's these young people who really are passionate about evangelism. They want to actually reveal Jesus to their friends. So they've already started to look at what does it mean to sort of use my hands, I guess, in faith. And there was this one lad that I was able to mentor for a few years, and do you know what? He encouraged me so much. He had such a passion for just sharing Jesus with his friends. He was coming back going, do you know what, Ed, I managed to pray for this guy at school. Didn't go very well, but I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. And it's just so great to hear this story of within Amplify. I mean, that's just one of the group of 10 that I had, of all of them just actually working out how can they reveal Jesus. As we said earlier, it's not just about the youth workers, but actually we've got kids here that they're about 16, 17, and they're trying to reveal Jesus to their friends as well.
That's amazing. So how would you encourage a young person that's encountered Jesus and is a Christian, how would you encourage them to go out to their friends, their peers, their classmates to kind of, spread the gospel as well?
Yeah, so I think just really praying for confidence. I read this quote in a book called Before You Share Your Faith, and it's saying if we don't pray before we share, we almost give ourselves a promotion. It's like actually it shouldn't be on our terms, it's on God's terms when we are able to have these conversations and to really soften the hearts of those that we're journeying with. So I'd say get confidence in that and be praying, but also really understanding that they're not expecting you to have all the answers, and you don't have to tell them you've got the answers. All you've got to do is tell them you have hope. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing that you have. You don't have all the answers. I'd say even now, I sort of said that at 21, I realised I should change how I live. I still haven't got all the answers. I'm still trying to figure that out. But bringing people on that journey of saying, do you know what? This is the journey I'm going on. I've found hope, which is brilliant. And this is how it's starting to change how I live. I think that's where you start to get a bit of curiosity in people that you're journeying with. And one of the best bits of advice I was given from one of my lecturers, I was telling you about them earlier, was to chuck it up. Ooh. Just chuck up something Christian and just see if they're interested in it. It's like, what did you do this weekend? It's like, I went to church.
Oh, is anyone gonna?
What are they going to say to that? If they don't say anything, that's absolutely fine. We're not trying to force these conversations, but actually we want to be aware that there's research done that actually a lot of your friends are probably more interested than you think. And if you've been praying as well, God's going to start to bring in that interest. So just chuck something up. Say, do you know what? I've been at church. Do you know what? I saw an answer to prayer.
Yeah.
and just see what sort of conversations come out of that around faith.
Yeah. And what tips would you give to your fellow mission worker, your fellow youth worker, faith guide? And what would you give to them?
No, that's a good one. I think one thing that I've learned perhaps through some of the good youth workers that I've had, and also through the coaching, we talk about actually our own experience can really influence how we do ministry, and that's a positive. We shouldn't hide from that. We should be using our whatever our hobbies are in order to share our faith with children and young people. And I think for me around coaching, it's questions. It's learning how to ask a good question. And that's not to play mind games. It's not to trick, but it's actually so you really understand where they are. Because I think there's so many times where I've sat down with children and young people and I've no idea. They could already be Christian. And I'm approaching it of, do you know what? I've just connected with these kids. I need to teach them about Jesus. When they're like, Ed, I already know about Jesus. I'm already a Christian. And if we don't ask these questions, one, it helps the conversation, but also it starts to build that meaningful relationship. Yeah. We've been doing a lot of work in the community at the moment, Faith Guide community, around what does meaningful relationship look like? And that's kind of a question we're starting to unpick. And I think learning how to have meaningful conversations through great questions is probably a tip that I'd share with people that are doing youth work at the moment.
Yeah. And what would your prayer be for them, for those youth workers, those faith guides, people in churches?
Yeah, I think my prayer for those engaged and those who are perhaps a faith guides or doing mission is just that they get a fresh passion for it. I think that's always so key. God's given, I'd say, everyone kind of a heart to some respect to reaching those who don't know Jesus, but those that have that passion for children and young people, just that they'll be able to create new meaningful relationships with their hobbies. For me, it was sport. It's been able to use football, been able to use music to make those connections. And I think just my prayer for them would be that they'll really find a way of using their passions and in the ministry they're doing.
And if anyone's been inspired by what you've said today and they want to get involved in helping reach the 95, how would you encourage them to do that?
Yeah, I'd say SU's all about partnerships. We'd love to partner. I'd say go to our website, so su.org.uk. Look at ways you can perhaps support us in prayer or giving, or maybe if you want help to start running your own things, your own mission for children and young people.
That's great. Thank you so much, Eddie. It's been great to catch up with you.
Thanks for having me.